Thanks for joining our on-demand presentation of building a world-class demand generation machine. Before we begin the presentation, I wanted to give you my background. My name is Brandon Schulte, and I'm the Director of Marketing Technology Services at Cirrus. We sit at the intersection of marketing, technology, and strategy. We blend the technological expertise of an IT services provider with the marketing proficiency of an ad agency. I have experience working for and with enterprise and mid-market firms across the Midwest and beyond to define their marketing technology strategy and how to go to market with it. This presentation offers common sense approaches that we are using to generate strong returns on investment with minimal costs and low risks for our clients. So what does world-class demand generation look like? It starts by unlocking the potential of your customers by anticipating customer needs to avoid missed opportunities. In my personal life, I recently built a deck, and as I was going through the process, I would be looking online for composite decking material. Brands that ultimately won my business did a nice job of retargeting me with ads on different sales of that decking material, as well as the framing materials needed to build the deck. This is the type of thing that we want to help you do within your business. Secondly, we connect activities to dollars to generate the best returns for your cost. A good example is last year, a CFO at one of the firms we worked with asked what the digital investment would be to drive $4 million of additional revenue that quarter and how it should be invested. We worked with a team to be able to identify which activities led to dollars and how to activate those within the different channels based on the data that we were able to collect within their platform. Next, we create customer experience that meets customers where they are and drives customer loyalty. So as a father of three children with numerous activities each and every night, I generally tend to respond to restaurant coupons that come to me late in the afternoon so I can know where I'm going to have dinner at that night or what we're going to pick up after the latest practice or event. Lastly, we help clients remove the barriers to maximize the effectiveness of your team and message. HubSpot estimates that nearly 1/3 of marketers' time is spent on manual tasks. By investing in the right technology, we've seen firsthand how customers can do more with less and be able to reach their goals. So when it comes to the recipe for success, there are 4 key ingredients. First, a 360-degree unified view of person and account records that aggregates relevant activities and stitches those interactions together regardless of device or platform. That data can be leveraged by various functional units of the business to create more meaningful interactions and deepen relationships with the customers. That could include how do we drive increases in average order value, how can we cross-sell or upsell, and how can we increase the lifetime value of a customer. Next, dynamic personalization. This not only means reaching your customers where they are, but optimizing those experiences to boost conversion rates and increase loyalty over time. Next, we'll talk about campaign automation. How can we use no touch or low touch or even just-in-time messaging to navigate customers through their customer journey? This should work for your company 24/7, 365 days a year, making money for your organization while you work, sleep, and play. Lastly, we'll discuss revenue performance management and how we have the ability to attribute revenue to costs and to understand the role that each touch point plays in the customer journey, which allows your company to efficiently manage resources to increase the output of every input. Therefore, 1 + 1 = 3 versus 1 + 1 only equaling 2 or 1 + 1 being less than 2. All of you understand the value of an integrated picture, but oftentimes things get in the way. Systems don't work together. You're working with cross-functional teams. There's a lack of organizational buy-in. The process takes too long or is simply too hard. We believe data, and more to the point, after your people, it is the most valuable asset that your company has. All firms struggle with getting value from their data. We believe this data should be treated as a competitive advantage to differentiate you from your competition. Too often as marketers, we focus tactically on the different channels that we all need to use to be successful. And while media and channels are important, there are fundamental questions that need to be asked and answered in order to see the types of returns from these channels that are critical to the success of your team. First, do you have a unified customer record? Are all sources of relevant data being captured, and how are you using this data to drive revenue? Secondly, how do you share data? Does your company have a data governance plan? Have you democratized your data so all frontline touch points, whether they be in sales, marketing, or customer service, are able to see the complete customer picture? And lastly, how do you attribute revenue to spend? Do you have a multi-touch attribution model? And then how close are you to bringing data back to all different functional units? And how do you tie that to the spend that you're making on those investments? When it comes to customer data architecture, it starts with the ability to aggregate data. This includes client-side data, like tracking things like links, website data, purchases, and content, and connecting those to transactional activities like CRM, customer service, email automation, customer fulfillment, or point of sale systems. This includes compliance tools like consent to say which data can and can't be passed downstream. Next, how do you standardize your data layer? This is taking input from various systems to map them in a consistent format that can be leveraged across the organization. Thirdly, do you have a customer data hub? This is where the 360-degree record of your customers and accounts lives. It's aggregated from various touch points and then based on activities and personas can be created to be activated later in the process. An example of this might be a VIP customer, someone who's abandoned their cart, maybe somebody who browses but doesn't buy or fill out a form. Then you need to look at the integrations. How are you able to connect that data to various distribution systems, whether that be email, web, paid search, or paid social? And lastly, how do you use that information to activate the knowledge in real time to make interventions to provide relevant products or services and customize experiences for your customers? Data inventory is a big piece of your customer 360-degree roadmap. A recent report by Blissfully found that the average firm uses an average of 120 different applications. That's pretty scary when you think about regulations like GDPR with the right to be forgotten, or CCPA in California that went into effect earlier this year. It also means that from a customer journey perspective, unless you know all your sources of data, your team will never get a complete picture of the customer. Next comes data governance. While data governance isn't exciting, it might be the most important initiative to get right. This structures who your company collects, aggregates, and transmits data and how it determines the business rules to do that. It also defines when records are updated and when they are not. For example, a retail service member from Iowa who opened a checking account at his local branch. Then he gets deployed and takes on a new credit card while living in Germany. Does your credit card application update the master record? Is all the data shared between systems or just the country? So now it says street, city, state, and zip for the address in the US, but the country is now Germany, which obviously would create a huge problem. Next, how do you use user stories to define outcomes? Do we want to send an abandoned cart email within 24 hours to anyone who drops off during the purchase process? Or if a customer buys a certain product, do we want to try to upsell them to a related product? How do you use integration to connect your data from different systems? What systems need to be even connected? And how do, say, marketing automation, CRM, and customer service ticketing systems work together to provide different insights on that customer? How are you able to activate data across channels? What visualizations, notifications, or channels do we plan to use this insight for? And how do we plan to show our different customer-facing employees the information they need in order to better do their job and handle customer needs? Lastly, refinement. How do we optimize our experiences to evolve our communications with the customer as the relationship with us changes? After getting your data foundation in place, the next ingredient is to add personalization to your marketing mix. This means customizing experiences for customers based on what you know about them. For example, as a consumer, think of how powerful it is when a company reduces friction during your interaction with the brand, using factors such as buying behavior, location, familiarity with the brand, and product interest. For example, a user based in Northern California with a family might have ads for Disneyland pop up, while a similar person that lives in Atlanta may get the same ad but for Disney World. Another example might be the user's context. Perhaps the person has a family but travels for business often. Therefore, on nights and weekends, leisure travel is highlighted when they're on your customer website. But during the day, destinations booked for business trips can be highlighted instead. While the previous scenarios make sense, too often companies fail to understand customers due to a variety of factors. These could be data silos, lack of budget and resources, or they haven't considered the customer journey to be a strategic priority yet. This leads to a customer expectation gap where users are expecting one thing based on their experiences, leaders like from using leaders like Amazon and getting something far different. This gap not only reduces conversions during the selling opportunities, but even for customers who buy your products, it leads to reduced loyalty and increases the risk that they will leave your company for a competitor that offers a better deal. Let's look through a case study that tells a story of a good personalized experience. Meet John, who is a technology salesperson who lives in the Bay Area. He is a frequent business traveler with a particular airline. Their first step in the process is this airline has collected not only his purchase transactions, but also his online behavior on the web, using their app, and engaging with emails, as well as other touch points. That data has been centralized in a profile that tells John's story. Based on his lifetime value to the company, they have added him to 4 key persona groups, which trigger specific outreach when he's interacting with the brand, as you can see above. In this example, John is looking to book a business trip to Denver for a trade show later this year. Once he comes into the system and looks at the flight, unfortunately, he doesn't make the decision to book at that time. So the company starts retargeting him with email and push notifications within his application on his mobile phone. From there, he ultimately gets a push notification that says his flight's almost sold out, and he decides to go in to make the purchase. Once his purchase is made, his lifetime value is updated. They also remove him from retargeting efforts, so they're not wasting money on a flight that's already been booked. And then lastly, they know to start sending him emails about different things that make sense for him when he starts to begin to visit the website, and how different information will be helpful for him to plan a good trip. Next, let's look at an example on the opposite side of good personalization. I recently moved to Omaha from Lincoln, and at my old house, we used a specific lawn service that did a nice job for me at the time. However, they don't have a location in the new city where I live. Before moving, I called them to say I was moving to cancel my service and that I was moving to an area that wasn't serviced. Now, imagine my surprise the following spring when someone from that service called up to see if they could service my yard that year. Once again, I told them that I had moved, and that I received several other calls and emails from the company that spring, as well as several years since, despite telling them numerous times that I have moved. While this pestering hasn't led me to directly not purchase their service, since I can't do it anyway since they aren't in my area, I have spoken to numerous friends in my old hometown about my experience with the company, which could have indirectly affected their business. I'm not trying to hammer this particular business, but think of how many times something like this has happened to you, and remember how bad the lack of personalization made you feel. A few steps can help any business getting started with personalization. First, start with journey mapping. To begin the process, begin thinking through a user flow with your business. How do you communicate with people who are in the awareness stage, and what content assets are needed there? And then how do you communicate with them in the consideration or purchase stages, and what different assets and channels are needed to be used to make that connection? What is the logical flow, and does your customer experience lead consumers down your desired path? Secondly, look at the different messaging. When you think of touch points, how do you navigate consumers through different channels, both digitally, in person, or within applications? Lastly, what success metrics are you using to track success? Do you have KPIs that you follow to see if you're meeting your goals? This could be things like average order value, lifetime value, conversion rates, and more. Also, what behaviors or activities lead to greater sales? For example, if a customer reads a particular case study and attends an event, does that increase their likelihood to convert by a certain percentage or X times more than having not done those things? Now that you have a data foundation in place and have begun to think strategically on how to embark on personalization, automation is how you deliver on those customer experiences at scale. A survey released by Send2 earlier this year found that marketing teams need the following things to be successful. First, tools that are easy to learn and use. One of the greatest things that we see when it comes to frustration and lack of adoption by marketing teams when it comes to technology is that they're too difficult to use. Many marketing leaders report a skills gap between the talent they need to reach their goals and what their current workforce offers. In fact, a recent study found that 2/3 of companies report that they don't have the right skills or talent to effectively use marketing technology. Secondly, teams are stymied by systems that are not connected to each other. This leads to poor segmentation, think batch and blast emails, for example, and a less than 360-degree view of your customer, which means that gaps are existing. Third, look at skill gaps and technical limitations that rely on the marketing team to work with their counterparts in IT. Too often we find the nature of work in marketing differs from that in technology. Even agile technology teams still work in the concept of sprints, which are a few weeks to a month, whereas marketers work in the concept of days, hours, and minutes to respond to customer demands. Additionally, this level of customization and flexibility that this requires a level of customization and flexibility that many organizations struggle to achieve. Lastly, even if marketing teams meet or exceed demand generation goals, too often we find a disconnect between the marketing unit and their friends in sales or e-commerce on what constitutes a good prospect and who to go after. As the customer journeys have become more complex, more tools become available, many companies have taken the approach to turning to more software as a service products to fill needs. While most tools provide value, the sheer magnitude of tools and the requirements for each tool differ. Add to the mix that in many cases, tools were selected for different teams and with even different functional units, the synergy within a technical stack can start showing diminishing returns or even negative returns. When you think of your technology stack, do you see balance, harmony, and the sums greater than its parts? Or do you see an out of control Frankenstein of tools that don't fit together? If you see Frankenstein, don't worry, we can help. So how does this marketing technology monster get created? There are two main reasons. First, we found that companies are well-intentioned, but the sheer multitude of options when considering marketing technology roadmap are overwhelming. The Chief Martech blog and Discover Martech conference put out an annual list of Martech vendors this spring. As you can see by the map, which looks like what you'd find at an amusement park or zoo with various lands, there are now 8,000 companies that offer solutions. It's unreasonable to think that any one person could be familiar with all the options and how they fit together. That's why most firms benefit from a trusted provider that works across many different companies and technologies to put together the right technical stack. In our experience, the ability for systems to integrate with one another is just as important as the overall features to utilize the full value of the tool to achieve the desired return on investment. The second main reason for automation gaps and inefficiencies stems from the different capacity for technology versus people or organizations to change. By its very nature, technology changes very quickly. What is great today is quickly yesterday's news. At the same time, I think it would be accurate to say most people dislike change, and as people make up organizations, most organizations change much more slowly than the technology platforms that they use. Over time, this leads to a widening gap, which necessitates organizations to undergo a major reset or change. Oftentimes, this happens when someone new comes into an organization and wants to use a technology that he or she is familiar with. Sometimes that change can be a net plus, for example, investing in tools that allow you to aggregate data or personalize the customer experience. And other times, it's change for the sake of change, and significant effort is expended without demonstrable benefits. To make sure automation technology generates business utility for your team, we've come up with 6 keys for success. First, understand your objectives. You should clearly be able to articulate what is needed and why. What will the future state allow you to do that the current state does not? What is the value of this investment? Does it increase revenue, decrease costs, or reduce the time to purchase? Secondly, conduct a gap analysis. Where do gaps exist and why? This could be in the form of a hypothesis statement like, you are unable to send abandoned cart emails to users who don't complete purchases. Is that because you don't have an email automation system? Because your e-commerce and email systems aren't integrated? Because you don't have resources to create the content? Because you can't get the data to see who abandons? Or maybe it's several of these issues combined. That will tell you where within the process to focus your efforts. Next, look at your people, processes, and systems. Too often, we think that a piece of technology can be a silver bullet to solve our problems. Often, technology does help, but if your people aren't able to utilize a tool to its potential and your processes don't adapt to the new state, then much of the value is lost. Take, for instance, a company who started out with a demand generation problem. By investing in CRM, marketing automation, and a customer data platform, they were able to increase their pipeline of activities from a few hundred per day to several thousand per day. However, if the processes don't change, to invest in a new lead scoring model, so the sales team went from a manageable number of leads per day to leads that could not be handled, so the prospects weren't getting followed up with in timely fashion, and the sales team became frustrated because the additional leads weren't yielding an equivalent amount of value. Next, rank your priorities. No company has the budget or resources to invest in everything, so you need to be strategic and use an objective metric like net present value to determine which projects to invest in. Next, gain leader buy-in. That would include executive sponsors, the project teams, and teams tangentially related to the project. For example, investing in marketing automation system not only benefits marketing, but it could also benefit sales because they might be able to send emails that are tracked in the system. It might benefit your e-commerce team because we're able to increase transactional messages and increase our conversion rates. And your customer service team that might be able to leverage surveys and status update emails to be able to see how customers are viewing our service. Lastly, create a budget not just for the automation software expenditures, but also for the people resources involved. Be sure to assess the opportunity cost of this project versus other projects that would be eliminated or delayed by investing in this particular tool or initiative. Once the project is greenlit, start by setting SMART objectives, which are specific, measurable, actionable, or realistic, and time-bound for the project. What will be accomplished? When will it be complete? What are the steps along the way? And how are we tracking success? Next, determine whether you will hire, train, or outsource the skills needed for the new project, both in terms of implementation and activation. Thirdly, determine what components will be built and what will be bought. A general rule of thumb is to build anything related to your core competencies or value proposition as a business, and to buy tools where the functionality is not strategic to your product offering. When buying a tool, look for something that you like or love 80% of the product and can live with, customize, or extend the last 20% of functionality with other tools. Fourth, create a roadmap that sets waypoints along the way. Generally, more successful rollouts are iterative, where the functionality comes online throughout the project rather than a final reveal. This helps build value during the implementation and builds interest within the team and organization. Next, communicate progress. Your company, in many cases, has made a substantial investment, so it's critical to detail how you're progressing related to your goals. Wins that can be publicized throughout the process are extremely important, not just for the team working on the project, but also for the organization as a whole. Celebrate milestones. It's important that the key team is recognized for their contributions, both internally and externally. This creates more excitement for the project and additional future capital for the next time you request budget for another tool. Seventh, be sure to audit progress, what is on track and what isn't, what is meeting expectations and what is falling short of expectations. This will enable your project team to intervene in real time. Lastly, be sure to optimize your plan as you go. Rarely do things go as they were drawn up, and those teams that are most able to adjust on the fly generally see better outcomes. The last ingredient for success is to tie results and revenue back to your program. Most companies realize they need to do something as the cartoon illustrates. Unfortunately, too often, they aren't sure what that something should be, and the actual data backs that up. As someone who has been in the industry for a long time and spent many years in education and business, it's concerning to me that many leaders and their companies struggle with decision making. It's sad to think that much of this consternation stems from the lack of real-time analytics. Before we go forward, let's go backward to understand the evolution of marketing analytics. It used to be that all sales or marketing was done one-on-one. Think of the town crier hundreds of years ago that basically had a quota of, say, newspapers that he was supposed to sell in a given day. Sometimes today you can see this guy dressed up as the Statue of Liberty during tax season, or someone wearing a sandwich board outside of a restaurant. Then we evolved into the traveling salesperson who had an annual sales quota and sold a suite of products. Then came the media plan where a celebrity would appear on TV, radio, or print ads to support the brand. Nowadays, we are in an omni-channel environment with online and offline channels that all flow into your sales funnel. The analytics need for each of these stages were different, ranging from how many newspapers the salesperson returned at the end of the day, to web, email, paid, social, traditional media, B2B, or B2C metrics that are needed to track success today. The always-on campaign, which is the hallmark of digital marketing and needed to reach the fast-paced consumers of today, is a very competitive landscape competing for distracted consumers via web searches, constantly full inboxes, and a full news feed. As we touched on earlier, customers expect you to reach them, that you know them and are giving them something of value. They also expect you to be willing to reach them with messages on multiple channels. Some might prefer email, some text messaging, some traditional reach outs from a salesperson, and others prefer a personalized experience when they act with your brand on a website. Customers expect to have instant gratification with instant fulfillment of products and services, and the ability to pay with different payment methods, and in many cases, multiple currencies. So with all these touch points, how are marketers supposed to understand what works? As someone who has played, coached, and refereed sports most of my life, an analogy that resonates with me is who gets credit for the score. While all sports do it a little bit differently, these statistics don't just determine who wins and loses the game, but in the professional ranks, it determines who gets a bonus or a new contract and who gets cut or traded. As you can see in the diagram above, the striker gets credited for the goal and the left wing gets credited for the assist. But what about the midfielder who controlled the possession, finding the wing open, running down the flank with a great pass? Or the defender who began the attack, or even the goalkeeper who stopped a shot from the opposing team that started the scoring play? You could argue that without those other three activities, the goal would have never occurred. In many ways, sports represents not only life, but also business. Think of the salesperson in most B2B opportunities. While the salesperson closes the lead and gets the commission for the sale, there was an in-person event that generated the lead for the salesperson. There was an on-demand webinar that drove the prospect to sign up for the event. There was a newsletter that highlighted the webinar. There was a paid retargeting campaign that led the prospect to sign up for the newsletter. And there was the organic search rate ranking that first got the person to site to learn about the brand and to be entered into the retargeting campaign. Just like scoring the goal in the soccer play, it's doubtful that the sale would have occurred without the combination of the other 5 activities. Here are a few steps to creating the right analytics framework to drive success within your business. The first step is to validate your data. What is the source of truth, and does that equate to your success? Secondly, being able to attribute revenue from different marketing channels can be difficult. I worked with a company that ran paid search ads on Google, paid social ads on Facebook, and used Google Analytics for e-commerce reporting. Each platform has different attribution models. For example, Google Analytics used the last touch method to attribute sales by channel, whereas Facebook and AdWords use attribution models that gave those channels credit when a user clicked or even served an ad within 30 days of the sale. This led to a situation where one year Facebook showed an ad revenue of several $million, mainly through indirect activities that no doubt assisted in the sale. Whereas Google Analytics showed direct revenue tied to Facebook that was approximately 5% of the total revenue that Facebook sought credit for. This several $million gap was an obvious problem. Reporting must be transparently shared across the different stages of the funnel. For example, email analytics should aggregate with web visits, form conversions, and CRM leads and opportunities in order to tell the full story. Dashboards should be created not just for senior leadership, but also for tactical users that make decisions on campaigns. The old adage that using historical reporting to make decisions is like driving looking in the rearview mirror is true. However, if your analytics are real-time, better decisions will be made on which campaigns to shut down and which to give more budget to. Also be sure to tie investments to results. As we showed earlier, only 2 in 5 marketing decisions are based on data. Think of the value to your organization if even 70 to 80% of your decisions were based on results, even if your goal is to get to 100% of quantified data decisions. Lastly, by leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence, you can take your analytics to new heights, discover value that you didn't even know you were missing. We've covered a lot of ground today, and hopefully you found the presentation valuable. While some of the concepts we discussed don't happen overnight, we can tell you from personal experience that they are worth the investment, and you don't have to embark on these initiatives alone. Cirrus is a 34-year-old data and technology consulting firm headquartered in the Midwest. As our company has grown over the years and the world as we know it from a data perspective has advanced, so have the services we've provided. We've grown up solving businesses' data challenges for all sizes of companies in nearly every industry. Our process is to work with your company throughout the journey lifecycle. Starting with an initial research phase, we offer free learning sessions like this webinar and on-site sessions where appropriate. These supplement our regular thought leadership that highlights relevant industry topics. We also have paid workshops and targeted consulting sessions where we dive into a piece of your business or your entire operation to complete a deep dive into your organization to help create your marketing technology roadmap. During the strategy phase, in addition to putting together this roadmap, we've come up with the metrics for success, requirements, and steps for success along the way. During the hands-on phase of the project, we can work with your team in various models. We can do it for you, we can do it with you, or even show your team how to do it on your own and be your consultant. Lastly, we look to maximize the value of our partnership to continue to deliver optimal results as your team and company grow. Thank you for your time today. We'd like to discuss your unique situation and how we can help make an impact for your business. Please don't hesitate to reach out with questions on this presentation or how our services can help propel your business forward. Thank you and have a great day.